Delegate Lopez presenting HB 724. And we bid you adieu, Delegate Vogel. Vogel. Yeah. Good afternoon, Delegate Lopez.
Good afternoon. The seat is very warm.
It definitely has gotten hot in here.
Yeah,
for sure.
Hopefully I can.
All right, you may
take
begin.
The temperature down. Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. For the record, I'm Delegate Leslie Lopez, representing District 39, here to present HB 724, Employment Discrimination. Caregiver status. Maryland has long been a leader in advancing fairness and opportunity in our workplace. Our laws already protect discrimination based on race, gender, age, disability, sexual orientation, military service, and other distinctions. But today, a major gap remains, one that affects millions of Marylanders every day. Under current law, there is no protection for workers facing discrimination because they care for a child, an aging parent, a spouse with a disability, or another loved one in need. This bill closes that gap by adding caregiver status as a protected class under Maryland's Employment Anti-Discrimination Statute, ensuring that no one is penalized at work simply for fulfilling family responsibilities. The problem is clear and well documented. Employers too often assume that caregivers, especially women, are less dedicated, less flexible, or less deserving of advancement. As a result, caregivers are passed over for promotions, denied hiring opportunities, or even forced out of their jobs. National studies show that family responsibilities discrimination disproportionately affects women, single parents, workers of color, and the very people who hold communities together through unpaid care work. This bill is not a new idea. In fact, in 250 states, counties, and municipalities, this is already law, caregiver protections. In 9 counties and municipalities in Maryland, this is already law for family protected status. But what we need now is a statewide commitment. Maryland should not lag behind our neighbors, affirming that caregiving is not a liability. It is a vital contribution to our families, our economy, and our shared humanity. Together, we can ensure Maryland stands with its caregivers because protecting caregivers means protecting families, communities, and our state's future. By passing HB 724, Maryland would take a step forward toward family stability, economic security for all Marylanders. We affirm that no one should have to choose between the job they need and the loved one who needs them. Thank you, and I urge a favorable report in my most calm voice.
Good afternoon, Chair Wells, Vice Chair Kerr, and members of the committee. My name is Sarah Westrick. I'm the Advocacy Director for AARP Maryland. On behalf of our 850,000 members across the state, I am supporting HB 724, the Caregiver Employment Discrimination Bill, and thank Delegate Lopez for introducing this important legislation. AARP is the largest nonprofit, nonpartisan organization representing the interests of Americans aged 50 and older and their families. We urge the committee to support this critical legislation that recognizes the invaluable contributions of family caregivers and offers them much needed employment protection. Caregiving is a major economic issue. Maryland has 1.16 million family caregivers. That's 1 in 4 adults, and most of them are working age and employed. You will hear from a member of our advocacy team in a few moments about her personal journey. For full data and analysis, please refer to my written testimony and the attached AARP research. I will note today that 64% of family caregivers work while caregiving, and many of them provide more than 40 hours a week of unpaid care, essentially adding a second full-time job. And 38% of caregivers report major financial hardship, including depleting savings, unpaid bills, and increased debt. When caregivers are pushed out of the workforce, the financial fallout is long-term. They lose wages, health insurance, Social Security credits, and retirement contributions. These losses often hit sandwich generation workers at the very moment they need to build retirement security, yet discrimination forces them into an irreversible financial decline. HB 724 is a simple, practical measure. Adding caregiver status as a protected class ensures workers aren't fired, demoted, or penalized simply for caring for their loved ones. We urge a favorable report. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Nicole Tortorello. I am not from the advocate community. I'm the managing attorney for the Workplace Justice Project at the Public Justice Center, and we also urge a favorable report. As was already said, the need for this is apparent in Maryland, with 1 in 4 adults in the state having caregiver responsibilities and 2/3 of caregivers holding other jobs while also providing care. Additionally, 30% of family caregivers have a household income of under $50,000 a year, meaning that this is also hitting low-wage workers in Maryland particularly hard. As Delegate Lopez mentioned, this bill would bring Maryland in line with 250 other states and localities that already ban discrimination based on an individual status as a caregiver, including 9 counties and municipalities in Maryland that already protect workers from discrimination based on their family status, which may include caregiving responsibilities. But workers outside those counties and cities in Maryland currently have to rely on a hodgepodge of federal laws that may not adequately protect them from common acts of workplace discrimination, like refusing to promote someone who has children or opting not to hire someone because they mention that they care for elderly parents during their job interview. All workers deserve dignity and respect, including workplaces free from all forms of discrimination and harassment, and this bill would further this goal for working caregivers. So the PJC supports a favorable report, and I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We do have a question from Delegate Wilson for the sponsor and the sponsor panel.
Thank you. I know we've had bills in the past. I think one was they wanted veterans and their spouses to be a protected class. For me, my concern then is the dilution of what that word means. And by the way, I'm looking at the definition, every single person in this room most likely would now be a protected class. If you care for a mother, a father, I have 3 children. So you know, and I'll say this because when the EEOC first started it was really to deal with the ramifications of not just slavery, but Jim Crow, and creating these protected classes to make sure these individuals didn't further suffer further harm as a community. And we have expanded the protected class to include gender, a multitude of things that, even sexual orientation, that by choice you're just put into. Though when I look at this bill, it now puts almost every single person in this room as a protected class, everybody. So the word protected class actually is meaningless. So being an African-American now becomes somewhat meaningless because we're all protected class. Being gay becomes meaningless because now we're all protected class. And I think coming up the way I did, and I'm also old, so maybe I'm just not getting it, at some point, and I believe this may be that point, and I really appreciate what you're going through, but this will almost make the word protected class meaningless because everybody's in it now. And I don't know how else to express myself on this, but by doing it as such, and basically everybody will have the same status as an African American, as an American Indian, as somebody who's homosexual. It's like every single person, by the way the bill is drafted, will have this status. And at that point, there's no use in having the word protected class. I mean, and just help me out here, because I know your intent, but do you understand what I'm saying?
Sure. No, absolutely. And I know this is an issue that you've been very passionate about for a long time. And so I fully respect that. And if there is a way forward that you're willing to work with me on, like 100%, I am there, and we will figure out how to get this language to a place that encapsulates the concerns that you have.
Because of course you want to provide protections for the people, and you know, and I agree. But at some point, if this bill goes by, I don't believe anybody in this room would not consider themselves a protected class. And it really, it's diminution of being an African American and the life that I've come through and the struggles that I've gone through, which is why we have protected classes of people. And I just wanted to express my opinion. And I apologize if it was offensive.
No.
Because I understand the point. I will hope you understand my point.
Sure. No, absolutely. It's a point well taken. And again, we can continue to talk offline if you're open to that, to get this to a place that you feel is respectful of everyone's lived experiences and also is respectful of the concerns that we're seeing within the caregiving community. I would offer this, if it provides you any comfort, the definition of caregiver status, the language that we use in this bill is directly taken from New York State's, I think the acronym is like HCCR. It's basically the equivalent in New York State to what we have as the MCCR. So this is not language that we invented or that we're recreating the will. It's already statute in New York. So, but I understand broader than the technicality of the words, the impact of a more broader inclusion. And so again, happy to work with you online to figure out how to finesse things that fit the letter of the law and also the spirit of the law that you're trying to reflect.
And again, because the way I read it, just if you care for a minor child, an individual with disabilities, or you rely on a caregiver for medical assistance, and the familiar relationship has to be caregiver's child, caregiver's spouse, domestic partner, caregiver's parent, caregiver's sibling, caregiver's grandchild, caregiver's grandparent. That encapsulates every single person in this room. And therefore, African-American, female struggling in the workplace, all that, it puts it all on that same level. But I appreciate the work. Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you very much, Delegate. Okay, seeing no more questions for the sponsor panel, or at least we do have one virtual witness, Ms. Teresa Robertson, who has joined us. We can see you. Good afternoon, Ms. Robertson. You have 2 minutes to present.
Good afternoon, Chair Wells, Vice Chair Kerr, and members of the committee. My name is Teresa Robertson, and I'm a resident of Howard County and a volunteer with AARP Maryland's advocacy team. I'm here today to voice out strong support for HB 724, the Caregiver Employment Discrimination Bill. I want to begin with something simple but important. Caregiving is leadership. Caregivers coordinate medical appointments, make quick decisions, and still show up at work ready to do their jobs every day. These are exactly the skills most employers should value, like time management, prioritization, problem solving, and the ability to work under pressure. But too many caregivers don't feel safe telling their employer what they're really dealing with. They worry that they'll be viewed as unreliable. And I personally remember taking calls from my husband's doctor in my car, hoping nobody noticed because I was afraid of losing opportunities. Now, discrimination isn't always dramatic. It can sometimes be subtle, like being reassigned or passed over for projects or slowly pushed out. That's caregiver discrimination, and it shouldn't be happening. The truth is, employers should want caregivers because they're capable, resourceful workers who deeply understand the value of a stable work environment. And yes, every one of us at some point may be touched with caregiving. The workplace is already filled with caregivers, but we don't see them because many of them feel the need to hide. HB 724 is about fairness. It ensures caregivers aren't punished for doing something nearly all of us will have to do someday, and that's taking care of the people we love. Thank you for your consideration, and I respectfully urge a favorable report on HB 724.
Thank you very much, Ms. Robertson. We have a question from Delegate Schindler.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. A quick question, anybody could really answer this, but is there a way that we could, respect my colleagues' concerns with this, but also be mindful of the fact that I think you've hit on something that I was very shocked to find that was not against the law, in that at one point in time, my son's mother applied for a job and inquired about the maternity leave benefits. We later found out through a friend that worked at that company, that's why she didn't get the job, is because she had inquired and they were like, oh, well, she's going to be out on maternity leave, so we're not going to hire her. So I think you've hit on something here, but I didn't know if maybe there was a way we could narrow this to some way that would respect that, but also handle a very important issue that you've hit on.
Sure. I think, that's the art and craft of lawmaking, is coming up with something that addresses the true impact that we're trying to achieve, but is reflective of, and respectful of everyone's lived experiences. To say the thing out loud, I noticed on the fiscal note, or I should say there's no opposition outside the Chamber of Commerce, and I think I've addressed their concerns with my previous answer. But we had an informational submission from MCCR, which is the body that's a state agency that receives complaints about discrimination and harassment first, and that's the first layer of things. And they said that in order to keep up with what they would consider the new complaints they would receive, they would have to hire 2 staffers. And so these are the people who are the experts on employment discrimination. And from their perspective, in order to keep up with how many prospective complaints there would be, it would take 2 additional staffers. So I think that underscores how frequent this is as an issue. And we do have protections already around gender. And many times what's seen as caregiving work is seen through a lens of gender, right? Because it's women who are mostly doing this type of thing. And of course, women who would be pregnant. So there's that. But this is already in law in 9 counties and all the major counties and municipalities. So there's a way that it's working.
Thank you very much. Seeing no more questions from the committee, thank you for the bill, Delegate. Thank you to your witnesses as well.